Welcome to Chuck's World of Infinite Mojo, brought to you by Holy Chuck Burgers. Our business is burgers.
Good morning, Katarina Witt. There's no such thing as bad boys, only boys with bad hair.
Sponsored by Maxwell's Clothiers, your bespoke tailor since 1961. And now, your host of Chuck's World of Infinite Mojo, Chuck Bastie. And welcome back. This is Chuck's World of Infinite Mojo. I'm your producer, Cam LaRock, and of course, I'm again with our host, Chuck Bastie. Chuck, how's it going today?
Big day today, Cameron LaRock. Big day. We got Big Brian Burke on the podcast today. We're going to be talking about the PWHL. We're going to be talking about Primetime Sports Management Conference. We're going to be talking about the ADM in the States. We're going to talk about being Brian Burke, and we're all going to get started as well. And I'm pumped. I've been up for like 17 straight hours ready for this. So let the good times roll.
Yeah, I don't really want to waste any time here today. So you know what? I think I should just get out of here right now, leave more time for Brian to talk and tell his story. So
well, before we go there, like there's a chapter in Brian Burke's book here. Being Brian Burke is a full-time job, Burke's Law. But chapter 6 said, gentlemen wear cuffs. And I just want everyone to see right there that I got the cuffs. Cameron does not have the cuffs.
I don't have the cuffs. Thanks for that, Chuck.
Yeah, we want to thank Maxwell Clothiers for being my bespoke tailor for almost 30 years now. They're coming into Toronto in the month of March. And remember, there's no such thing as bad boys, only boys in bad suits and shirts. So go get yourself fitted. It's economical, and Andy will take care of you.
Yeah, I say we bring up the best dressed man in the house right now.
He's the guy who wears cuffs. There he is, Brian Burke. Burkey, how you doing?
Good. How are you, Chuck?
I'm doing okay, man. Well, thanks a lot for coming on the show today. I know I've pestered you enough over the last little while to have you on the show, but I'm delighted that you're here.
Thank you. It's nice to be on.
Well, listen, I wanted to talk about your book just to start off with, because I want everyone to get a copy of it. I don't know if you can see it with my virtual background there. Thank you, Cameron. Burke's Law as well. You wrote on when you autographed the book for me a couple of weeks ago. Enjoy. I thoroughly enjoyed that. There's a lot of F-bombs there, which kept it authentic. But I really loved, it was like watching Draft Day, the movie with Kevin Costner. That was, just like this. I mean, obviously yours is real life and that was made for Hollywood, but I just thought I'd give you a couple quick minutes just to talk about the book. And we'll put a link in the bio as well where people can get it.
Yeah, well, thank you. Draft Day was a very realistic movie. I really enjoyed it. There were parts of it that were absurd. And you're watching, you're saying, where he turns to the young GM from Arizona and said, "Who's that? Who's the GM in Arizona?" Like, if you're a GM, you know the other GM's names, you know their dogs' names, you know their wives' names. You don't ever turn to someone and say, "Who's the new GM in Arizona?" So that part was absurd, but a lot of the rest of it was great. I thought I enjoyed it very much.
Yeah, and I mean your book just really flowed because you had a really good mix. I loved what you said about Pat Quinn, another good Irishman as well. How you were just brought up all the way. I didn't know you hated Harvard so much. That was kind of surprising. But you're pretty poignant about that. But just talk a little bit about Pat Quinn as well.
Well, quick plug. Stephen Brunt wrote the book. I narrated the book, but Stephen Brunt really polished it up and did a great job. He was a great partner to work with. But working for Pat Quinn was a great gift. I think in your life, if you get mentors of a certain level, it's just a great gift in your life. And I had 3. In addition to my dad, who was a wonderful mentor, I played for Lou Lamoriello, worked for Pat Quinn, and then worked for Gary Bettman. And Pat Quinn was just an immense guy. It was well liked and respected, as everyone said back in the day. Pat's big thing was fairness. Pat talked about fairness all the time. You got to be fair to your players. You got to be fair to your staff. You got to be fair to this. You got to pay fairly. He talked about fairness all of that. That's my son Patrick with Pat. And I talked about fairness all the time. And Pat lived his life that way. He wanted to be fair to everyone. And as a result, everyone loved him.
Yeah. And I love the fact that you actually took the time to, to acknowledge and edify him for the impact that he had on you as well. I thought before we can go into that, I would want to come back into your time, obviously, with Pat as well, and just kind of a little bit more, some of the takeaways you had. I mean, obviously, we just talked about the gentlemen wear cuffs as well. I love that one, but back to you and Pat.
Well, Pat grabbed me one day. I was actually leaning over the desk. We used to work that way. I went to work at 6 a.m. So when the Vancouver Canucks were open for business, when the Boston Bruins were open for business. So the Bruins opened at 9 a.m., so did we. I was at my desk at 6 a.m. And so then Pat would come in about 7:15. Pat would come in dressed to the nines. And one day I was leaning over the desk talking to Pat. And Pat turned to me and said, "What's with your shirts?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Gentlemen wear cuffs." So that was the last time I wore a shirt without cuffs. As soon as I bought a bunch, I called the tailor and had some made, and I've worn cufflinks ever since.
We got the chance to have the inaugural game for the PWHL. We're going to switch over right away to the women's hockey game. Obviously, you're the commissioner of the PWHL right now. Seamless transition for you. I think if, in my opinion, with your law background, with your CBA, with your GM, president, hockey operations, all the titles and hats you've worn over the years, to come in and have a perfect opportunity like the women's game to put it all together half a season, because you guys got everything rushed together, which worked as well. Talk a little bit about your start with the PWHL.
Well, I never thought I'd get a chance to do this job, Chuck. I never thought I'd get a chance to work for the women. I've been a fan of the women's game for 25 years. And everyone says they're a fan of women's hockey, but they're really not. Unless you buy tickets, unless you support the cause, you're not. And I remember I did an event with the Toronto Maple Leafs when I was there. And there were 400 people at a charity event. I said, "How many people here support women's hockey?" And they all raised their hand. I said, "Well, how many people here have tickets to the Furies game tomorrow?" The Toronto Furies were playing the next day. Not one.
Not one.
But I said, "You're not fans. You just want to say you're fans." So for me, I've loved this game. I've known all the key women in it, all the stars. I followed the teams. I was a season ticket holder in Toronto, season ticket holder in Calgary. And so to me, it was a great opportunity. I couldn't believe I got a chance to work for the women. So I jumped on right away. I think it's fantastic, and I think the game's going to be great. The new league is the key to this thing. It's funded and staffed properly. I think it gives us our best chance to be successful in the women's game. We have 6 teams owned by one owner, or 2 owners really, Billie Jean King and the Walter family. And I think it gives us a great chance to be successful. The games have been great so far.
Yeah, that's the picture of the opening puck drop there with Billie Jean King and Jana Hefford there. I took a picture of you in front of your office there with Jana Hefford as well. And I mean, the electricity in that arena that day was something I've never seen before. Like, it was just young girls coming in, their jerseys on, all in teams, adults, men, women, just everybody from every walk of life. There was a lineup down the road around the corner just to get in, and it just took a lot of people getting through security to get through as well. There's Billie Jean King and Jana dropping the first puck as well on opening day as well. There's a scrum that was just, crazy that first day as well. That's just down from your office down there. Christine Simpson down there, hair always looking impeccable. I don't know how she does that, but I want to know who her hairstylist is, because I'm jealous. There's Tessa and all the gals from Sportsnet as well on TSN that are down there covering the game. That was another look at the getup they got going on there. Like, that was a lot of rig, and they were there early just to get all that stuff as well. You must have gone crazy that day.
Well, it's exciting. I didn't have a major role. Like, you got to understand the way this league was set up. So the women negotiated a deal with the owners, the 2 owners, and it's an 8-year CBA, 8 years of collective bargaining agreement. That's Maple Leaf Gardens, now mad at me, of course.
Yeah.
So you've got Toronto Metropolitan University has replaced Ryerson, and it's TMU, and it's just a beautiful place to watch hockey. But you go back to where this was set up, the women bought out the prior leagues and said we're going to have one league. They funded it properly. They staffed it properly. They've given we're going to lose a lot of money for a couple of years, but it's given us our best chance to make money down the road. So it's been a great start. It's been amazing to me to watch. The women are unbelievable athletes, and they're finally getting their chance to show their stuff.
I think one of the things about you that everyone kind of gets over the years is your consistency with your value back to your owners. So like you spend money like it's your money, even though it's their money, and you're responsible for fiscally for that. When it comes to the business partnerships with the PWHL, corporate sponsors, getting all the low hanging fruit that you get in hockey operations within, what has been your biggest challenge so far working with PWHL and the communities right now? Because obviously you go straight into communities and do a lot of charity work as well with your teams.
Well, that goes to my three pillars. So when I first took over running teams, I worked. Pat Quinn said, when I went to Hartford, Pat Quinn said, "Don't do this my way, do it your way." And I sat down and said, "Okay, what 3 things or 4 things or 5 things will be the principal pillars of my tenure?" And number 1 was run it like a business, like you said, Chuck, is run it like a business. Like everyone says, well, of course you're going to run it like a business. No, I don't know a thing about hockey. Make major decisions. They make foolish decisions. Just look at the mess that everyone makes at the trade deadline every year. So to me, it was run it like a business. Number 2 was play an entertaining style. I didn't want to just play trap hockey, boring hockey. My teams chase the puck. My teams hit, my teams fight, my teams score goals. And number 3 was community service. It was really important to me that be a pillar of our community. And that's what I learned working for Pat. And that's what we've done ever since.
Yeah. I was lucky enough to meet Mr. Snyder from the Flyers just about 6 months before he passed away. And he said something I'll never forget about, and we didn't know he was ill at the time. And I took an overnight bus to Philadelphia, just finding out that he was going to be at his gala for the Ed Snyder Youth Hockey Foundation. And he said something to me that I'll never forget. He's like, "I never asked anybody in Philadelphia to buy season tickets. I went into the community and I supported the initiatives of the community. And then they all became Flyers fans in an Eagle #1 territory, area as well." And community is so important, especially when it comes to, women's hockey, because there's going to be that real bush up against, guys who are comparing the women's game to the male game, just like they do in tennis or volleyball or basketball. And hockey is going to get a pushback of that as well. So it's really important to see, obviously, the fans start showing up. We went to Scotiabank Arena and it was just absolutely packed. I saw you there on game day. But just seeing 19,000 fans show up just validates corporate sponsorships and business partners. Am I correct on that?
Yes, that was an amazing display. I never heard the building. I've been in Maple Leaf Gardens. I've been in Scotiabank Arena, been in Air Canada Center. Never heard the building that loud as that night. 19,000 fans, many of them girls. As you said, Chuck, wearing their sweaters, and it was so cool. And I'm not sure, I think we can duplicate that as we go along, but I'm not sure it'll ever be louder than it was that night. So I think they've never asked women to support women's sports. There's actually, if you look historically, the WNBA is the best example of women's sports. It's a great example to follow. But it's been a commercial failure. And it's cost them a fortune to subsidize the WNBA until it gets going, and now it's making money, I'm told now. But for years, it was millions and millions of dollars to support it. But women's soccer that has a standalone league now is doing great on its own. Yeah. And the women in the PW have gotten a chance now to buy tickets, and the support's been unbelievable. People want to watch women play sports. And so it's been amazing. And I think we're just getting going here. I think it's just the beginning of a great story.
Yeah, I mean, I was down there for morning skate. Yeah, there we are there. I haven't been down to, I still call it the Air Canada Center, but I haven't been down to Scotiabank Arena since COVID, on game day skates like that as well. So I put on my best salmon, got a couple of the pucks there, went down and brought my photographer, Mike. There he is right there. Good old Mike Jeanette. We had some great shots in the morning as well. But what I was left with in the morning press conference is, and I asked probably too deep of a question at this time in the morning, there we go, is I look forward to a day where the women today are having conversations with women that are 14 or 15 years old now that become pros at 22, 23. And the women now talk about, we had this one-off event that was at Scotiabank Arena and 19,000 people showed up. And then it just being an everyday event for that pro, and that pro coming in who's 14 now comes in and goes, really? Like, you didn't have this every single day? And it would just be something that would be so out of the realm, because this woman's game is going to explode now. And then things like this, Sarah Nurse giving away $50,000 to our charity on the board there. And that place, like you said, Berkey, that place went electric. I've talked to the ushers. I've never heard anybody say the exact same thing what you just said. Not during playoffs, nothing has that crowd ever been louder.
Yeah, I think it can become routine and can become commonplace. We've got to keep building this. Getting 19,000 people is wonderful. We got to begin doing that on a regular basis. We've had some smaller crowds at different places. We've got some challenges with our venues. So Mattamy has been wonderful, but it's a very small venue. We're not sure that's a good long-term place. We love the venue. We love the people. We love the way it looks, but it's pretty small. We've got USB and what the Islanders play has been problematic for us, drawing big crowds and playing some games in Connecticut. We've got to sort out our venues. But the important thing, Chuck, is we're playing. People say, well, the teams don't have names. We're PWHL Toronto. We're PWHL Montreal. People say you don't have names, you don't have logos. People love the sweaters that we're wearing now. And the fact is we're playing. I think the key here is we are playing this game. We've launched this league. We'll figure out the rest of it as we go along. We've got great leadership. We've got great ownership. We're in a great position because we're playing. We're actually playing games. We're talking about hockey right now. I'm in St. Paul. That's where I'm going to the games yesterday and tomorrow or today. We're watching the women play. This is a reality now. 10,000 people the other night. There'll be 3,000 or 4,000 tonight. So we're playing, and it's a great launch. It's a great start. We've got some issues, but we'll sort them out.
Obviously, being a hometown boy right now, I'm still, cheering for my girl Natalie Spooner. She's on a tear these days. She's like leading the leading score right now, and Kristen Campbell is just killing it right now in goal. She had a bit of a sluggish start, but I made some calls. I talked to some people, and I had my people talk to her people. She got that all sorted out, and now she's pitching shutouts and having a good old time. What's your take so far on the hockey?
Well, unlike you, Chuck, I'm not going to take any credit for the goaltending, but they had a slow start. They looked sluggish. Their power play sucked. And they've got a real good coach, Troy, and I think they've sorted things out, and they're on a pretty good roll. So I'm looking forward to seeing them play tonight here.
Yeah, awesome. One of the things I wanted to go to as well is, like, we were talking about charity, obviously community, getting back in the community. I wanted to bring up You Can Play because I've had Brian Kitts on my podcast a couple of times as well, and he's been just remarkable at coming on board and just being genuine and not overselling everything. I was in Denver this last fall. I was able to actually meet up for a coffee downtown. But I just thought we'd start with You Can Play and leave it to you, and you can introduce to people who haven't heard of You Can Play.
Well, You Can Play was launched the You Can Play project was launched by Patrick and several other people, not me.
Yeah.
I was one of the founders. Everyone gives me credit for it. I had very little to do with this. This was Patrick's idea, and Patrick staffed it and got it off the ground. But basically, it was, if you can play, you can play. It doesn't matter what church you go to, doesn't matter who you go home with. If you can play, you can play. In other words, we're not going to judge you for anything, but can you be a member of this team? Can you help us win? And it was wonderful because players were fighting to get into the initial artwork on it. It was black and white headshots on these guys. And I had players calling me saying, can I do one of those? So after my son, Brendan, passed away, and he was openly gay, he passed away in a car accident. After Brendan's accident, You Can Play was founded in the next year or so in memory of Brendan. And it's been a wonderful part of our lives because it's given a dead boy a chance to make a difference. This wonderful young man has changed lives all over the planet. So it's been fantastic for Brendan and for us. And it's been an important message for the LGBTQ plus community.
Yeah. And I remember when that actually, happened when I was watching TSN 2009. It was like December, a couple months before you guys went to the Olympics in Vancouver. And watching that and just thinking, you go Berkey. Like I'd only met you once or twice at a TIFF event before that. But like when that came out, I was just like, good on you. Because call me old fashioned, but I think, a man of your generation probably has grown up with a little bit different views of what we have nowadays, where they're just not as openly, I guess, inclusive of other people as well. My dad's generation, exact same thing, and he grew up in the Army. So to see this, like, I'm all for inclusivity. I like how you said, I don't care who you go home with. I just care that you're a good person. If you say I'm racist about anybody, I'm racist against assholes. That's who I don't like. And I see that, you taking a step here as well, and doing something that can't be even like more utterly painful. And I know you talk about it in your book, and I'll spare this, but just to lose a child and then come back and then be able to create a legacy for Brendan to come back with, and Patrick to move forward with this, to give other people inspiration as well. And there's a picture of you and Patrick together moving forward as well. So that way everybody just feels a little less shitty about life, even on a better day.
Yeah, and I think it's really important if like a lot of people died that day. I was reading the stats over this right after my son passed away. How many people die in a certain day, and how many people die in a certain hour? How many people die at a certain time of day? And a lot of them, they say all these nice things about people. He was a great kid. He was a great kid. A lot of them aren't. A lot of them are average. A lot of them are below average. But Brendan was a great kid. And I just remember meeting with the three other kids, and after the three older kids, after Brendan's funeral, and I said, I don't know what you guys have in mind, but we're marching on as a family. We're not going to let this derail us, and we're not going to let it stop all the things we do. And that's where Patrick came up with the idea for You Can Play. But I said to the family, I'm not going to sit there and mope. We're going to keep marching ahead as a family, and I need you to do the same thing. And so we've never dwelled on. We miss Brendan every day. It's a sad day on his birthday. The anniversary of his death. These are terrible days for us, but the memory and the legacy has gone on, and we're not going to ever let that stop.
Yeah, and I know last year they had the tobacco San Jose Sharks coming up as well. And you came up with a statement as well, and obviously you're a good friend with Gary Bettman. That must have been a difficult line to kind of like cater to. And here's your quote. I repeat that I'm extremely disappointed. I wish players would understand that the Pride sweaters are about inclusion and welcoming everybody. A player wearing Pride colors or tape isn't endorsing a set of values or enlisting in cause. He is saying you are welcome here. You are here in every single NHL building. And I thought that was very poignant because all the banter on social media that happened that day, I just see that people were just hijacking that agenda for their own belief system, as opposed to saying something simple like what you just said, like you're welcome here.
Yeah, and Gary Bettman's been a great ally of our cause, so we're all very careful not to take on Gary. Not because I'm perfectly willing to take on Gary on any topic, but he's an ally. Yeah. He's been a great supporter of our cause, and like in Toronto at All Star, we had a gay pride hockey game. I coached one of the teams, and guess what? Guess who was there? Gary Bettman was there at 8:30 in the morning. He gave a check for $25,000 to the Toronto Gay Pride Hockey Association, and he stayed and visited with the players. Like, he was on the bench with me, talking to our gay hockey players. Like, he's an ally. Mm-hmm. But the world we live in now, they've taken on this whole thing. We're not going to have military nights. We're not going to have any cause nights. And it's not the part that troubles me, Chuck, is no one sat around and said, you know what, we got to get rid of those military nights. We got to get rid of those. And so let's get rid of all of these things. Someone sat around and said, we got to get rid of these pride nights. I'm sick of them. And the right wing is sick of them. We got to get rid of them. And if we do that, we got to get rid of all those nights. So we'll get rid of hockey fights canceled. We'll get rid of military nights. We'll get rid of pride nights. And the motivation was, let's get rid of pride nights. That's my firm belief. And it's a sad commentary, but I understand why the league did it. Like, that didn't trouble us as much as the pride tape ban did. Getting rid of those nights, as long as we get rid of all of them, as sad and tragic and stupid as that is, we understand the logic. Flawed, twisted, whatever, but we understand the logic. But to say you can't wear pride tape, I thought that was kind of vindictive and malicious and unnecessary. So that was the one little twist that really bothered me. But we've had players wear it anyway, and that's been the great part of it. So that's a good thing.
I like Scott Lawton's my boy in Philadelphia. Scott came up, he's a King Clancy nominee as well. We're going to have him on the podcast coming up as well. But Scott just defied all that and just put on pride tape anyway and just said, you know what, because F you. And I love that about Scott as well. And, here's the one thing I get a little like uppity about, bullies, I think that, in my life, I've been a bully and I've been bullied, and neither one of them are fun. And I certainly got to walk a really slippery slope on this because I don't want to bully anybody, but I certainly push back on people who are trying to be non-inclusive or not be, more open about other people's belief system. Because my dad was in the Army. He wasn't a very smart man, I'll say that, but he said something I'll never forget. He's like, Chuck, we serve because we give people the right to choose how they want to live their life, especially if we disagree with it. That's what freedom is. And freedom is a choice up front, knowing full well that there's always going to be a compromise. So whether I'm gay or straight, it doesn't matter. You got a choice. Whether you want to do this as a profession or go to college or whatever you want to do, if it doesn't infringe upon the happiness and bullies anybody else, that's what freedom is. And that's why I think it's so important to make sure you have allies, whether they be people of color or marginalized people or LGBTQ. Like, pick one and just get behind and be an ally behind one.
Yeah, one thing I quarrel with Chuck is I don't think you have a choice of whether you're gay or not. And if people say it's a lifestyle choice or people have elected this lifestyle, I think the experts would disagree with you on that. But the point that your dad made is the right one, is that people have a right to their opinion. Yeah. They don't have a right to hate. They don't have a right to act in a way that bullies other minority groups, special interest groups. But they have a right to their opinion. I'm not trying to enlist people in a cause when I say come for a pride night. And that's the part that troubles us when people say we can't have pride nights. All we're saying on Pride Night is we're not asking you to sign up for a certain church or a certain set of values or endorse gay marriage, or we're not asking you to take any position at all. We're saying you're welcome here. If you're part of the LGBTQ plus community, you're welcome here. That's all we're trying to say. And so I think you are entitled to that. You are entitled to that freedom. But there's a lot of ignorant people out there. I used to argue with a lot of them. Now I just tell them I feel sorry for them.
And just to be clear, I know being gay isn't a choice. My reference was saying that other people need to choose to be more inclusive of other people.
Yeah, I wasn't correct. It wasn't correcting you, Chuck. I think someone would call you right away and say that was a poor choice of words.
Yeah,
I was trying to do it gently, but I know exactly what you meant.
Yeah, I've got a gay sister, and again, it's not a choice. It's like you don't choose who you love. Your body tells you who you love.
Yeah, I asked Brendan once. I used that choice of words when Brendan was still alive. I said lifestyle or choice, or I picked it. I said it poorly, and Brendan said, "Dad, do you think I would choose to be part of a hated minority?"
Hardest way to do anything.
People despise me. He said people fear me. People hate me. He said, "Do you think I would choose to be part of that minority?" Yeah. So it's not a choice, but it's a group that we love and we got to protect.
Well said. I would be remiss if I didn't go to USA Hockey. Obviously, I'm a proud Canadian, but I love hockey. And I was 7 years old. My dad was posted at the Canadian Embassy in D.C., so I grew up in Northern Virginia. So I got a chance to watch the Miracle on Ice in real time as a kid. And there wasn't a person in my block or in my small town in Vienna, Virginia, that didn't watch that game that day. Obviously, it was tape delayed, but it was the biggest moment of, and I didn't care it was Canada. I was just happy that the Russians lost as well. But I wanted to ask you first, where were you watching Miracle on Ice when that first happened, and what were you doing?
Well, it was on tape delay. I was in law school, and I was walking out of my room, and my roommate came in. He said, do you want to know who won? Because the game was over in the afternoon, and it was tape delayed. And I said, no, don't tell me. So I watched the game like everyone else and watched them beat Red Army. And it was a huge thing where it was an anomaly for me because I kind of lived in two worlds hockey-wise. I played hockey at Providence College, but I played summer hockey in Minnesota. And it's funny, I was telling someone this last night. I played against all the top players from Western NCAA teams, Wisconsin, Colorado College, Denver. They all came back and played summer hockey in St. Paul or Minneapolis. And that's what, so I looked at those guys. I played against Mike Eruzione, Jack O'Callaghan, Dave Silk, Jimmy Craig, all the guys from the East, but a lot of the guys from the West, Buzz Snyder. These are all the guys I played against. So I think I played against 13 of those guys. I knew almost all of them. So I did not know the result. I told my roommate from law school, don't tell me who won. I went home and watched it later, and I was so proud of those guys. Mike Eruzione was a great player in college and a great guy. Herb Brooks was a wonderful man, a great coach. And Craig Patrick was the GM of that team. And he's a guy that never gets mentioned.
Yeah.
That was responsible for the miracle, which changed hockey worldwide, not just in the U.S. So it was a life-changing moment in hockey. It was there's a whole generation of kids that started playing hockey or took up hockey, had already started playing, but we got a new energy to play it as a result of Mike Eruzione's group and what they did.
Yeah, and I think my very first podcast that I did 14 years ago was with Mike Eruzione. He was the first guy I reached out to and wanted to have on my show. I countered him with Jeremy Roenick after that because he's crazy, and I love him. But Craig Patrick was right after that as well. Just like you said, Craig Patrick is the unsung hero of that story. I say the second one is Mark Johnson, because I still don't think Mark Johnson got due for his, if he doesn't, take that Dave Christian slap shot from center ice at the buzzer, split those two defensemen, score that goal at the buzzer against Tretiak. There is no Tretiak not coming out at the second period. And that game changes obviously in the third period because they only took two shots in the second period and Michigan didn't have to play that well. But that changed the entire flow of that game as well. So, I mean, when I had Craig on the podcast, I was just talking to him and he was just so humble. He was just so, he gave everything back to those guys. Those guys worked hard. Those guys, worked their asses off. They came together as a bunch of guys. Biggest upset in sports history. And that was an amazing moment for me.
Yeah, I'll never forget it. And no one will. No one that follows hockey they'll still be talking about that in 200 years.
You and I were talking a couple of years ago about the ADM. I got you for like 20 minutes on Game Day Skate. And you said to me, like, the ADM has changed. I say the American Development Model for people who don't know what the ADM is with USA Hockey. But, I met with Ken Martell. I'm going to go back 2012. And I was amazed at his vision about bringing science into the sport of hockey. And obviously, as a Canadian, I think, we have this hubris about us that hockey is our game. And the United States has really, really caught up. Especially with the ADM as well. But I thought we'd just talk a little bit about how the ADM has changed the game of hockey in the United States.
Well, the ADM basically was saying, how do we maximize the ice time that we have that's so scarce and so rare and so expensive and so hard to find? How do we maximize ice time? And using 18 players to skate for an hour is a pretty poor use of ice time. So the ADM, the American Development Model, they said, we're going to put 35, 40, 30, we're going to put at least double the number of players on the ice for that time. And we're going to stress skill development. Instead of players skating around, shooting the puck every 3 or 4 minutes, we're going to put some intensity into it, and we're going to work on skill development. So they came up with 7 stations. and you go station to station. So you work on quick starts, and then you move over and you work on explosiveness, and you work on shooting the puck, and you go through, and your hour on the ice time has greatly intensified your skill development and your work, and you get to skate the whole time. You're standing around in small groups, but just for a minute or so. So it maximizes your skill development and your ice time use and your workload. And everyone's followed it. Like even the Canadians that have not adopted the ADM have gone to stations and gone to smaller groups and better use of ice time. Even the schools that don't use the ADM, they kind of do. So I think it's been an amazing development in hockey for the U.S. I think if you talk to people, it will tell you. I remember talking to Igor Larionov, and this is when he first came over. So this would be like '89. I said to him, "When was the first time you played hockey in a game with a referee?" And Igor had to think about it. He said, "Well, maybe when I was 13. Up till then, all I did was practice, and he did stations, and they had 60 kids on the ice sometimes. So I think they were ahead of us. ADM, I think, codified what a lot of teams were doing in Europe before we did it. But the ADM has really made a huge difference in the development of players. And it shows with the development of the American team over the Canadian team over that time. Now, I will point out, as a dual citizen, we should be better in hockey at some point because the disparity in population is so great.
Yeah.
More people in California than there are in Canada. So we should be making strides and making improvement and getting better and winning championships and so on. So it's not a foregone conclusion, but the ADM has certainly helped.
That being said, so one of the things I've always wanted to ask you this is, and I want your take on this, I really do. I have a fit that I throw every single Christmas on Boxing Day when World Juniors comes out. And I'm of the opinion that Team Canada has more resources, more coaching, more arenas, more unadulterated resources at any one given time than all the other teams combined. I'm being facetious about this. It's not true, but that's the way my brain works. I think that we should be able to field two teams the second team could field at least as good or not better to win medals. And yet every single year Canada suffers. And then I watch someone like Finland with the entire population is 5 million people and how they overachieve every single year. And I look at them and I bite it and I'm just like, what are they doing differently? Whether it be Moneyball or draft day, what's your take on where Canada is underachieving statistically of what you think they could be, where the United States is overachieving and where people like Finland and Sweden are killing it?
Well, I think it's a difference for all the countries, but I think what's really hurt Canada in the last few World Juniors has been the players that aren't there. So number one, they don't take the best group of players because a lot of them are, not a lot, but 3 to 7 are playing in the NHL. And so those players aren't eligible. And I think that really hurts Canada disproportionately. Other teams can't send players either that are playing in the NHL, but in Canada, I think it disproportionately hurts. I think Canada could enter 2 teams. I think the notion that you're going to beat someone in a one and done tournament, because that's kind of what it is. Once you get to the medal round, it is for sure. But even in the pool round, when you're in the first round, if you lose a game, you're kind of screwed. So I think I think Canada does an amazing job. I think they still have a monopoly, if you will, on greatness and what they do. I admire what Canada does. A lot of what we've done in the States is try to emulate what Canada does. So I think Canada's just done a remarkable job, and they're still, whatever Olympic Games, the next, what they're talking about, a Four Nations tournament or Olympics, whatever's next, Canada will always be one of the favorites because that's what they do. They're remarkable.
And what's your take on Finland and Sweden and, to a lesser version, Latvia, having runs with small populations, having really big kicks at the can, bullying the Canadians up?
Well, I think Canada or Finland's done the number one thing they've done is develop goaltenders better than anybody. And I've talked to their people about how they do it. I think we have to make some changes in how we do it. But I think that's just that's. If you look at Norway, they have the best ski jumpers in the world. If you go to Holland, they've got the best speed skaters in the world. I think it's to be really good at one thing is not that difficult if you put all your resources into it. But I agree with you. What the Finns have done is remarkable, and what the Swedes have done is remarkable. But I would say, how many sports are they competing in?
Mm. Yeah, just one. Maybe soccer is a very distant second. I think that's. Sweden obviously loves soccer. Sweden's my most favorite country. I've been there a dozen times, and I think they're very close to what they're nicer Canadians. They're better looking Canadians. But again, like they love their hockey and they love their football, their soccer as well. So like they got splitting between two sports. Maybe that handball, and they got inboundy as well. But but they have 5 million people in Finland. I mean, that's like half the GTA, the Greater Toronto area, that they're drawing from, and that's where the metrics in my head just goes crazy, thinking, how do you draw that in such a small population and then go out there and compete? Same thing with Latvia. I was in Latvia in 2018, met with their ice hockey federation, and they're having a wonderful kick at the can for 2 million people as well. And they're a big brother to Estonia, Lithuania, to a smaller degree, Hungary, playing up in a division they probably shouldn't be in, but they're still doing it.
Yeah, again, I think it's a question of what you want to be good at. If all your top athletes, the key to be competitive in a number of sports, your top athletes have to play more than one sport. If you want to be the U.S., you want to compete in track and field, you want to compete in soccer, you want to compete in football, your top athletes have to focus on one sport. And I remember Bob Johnson, the late great Badger Bob Johnson. I remember we were watching at the Goodwill games, we were watching the Russians practice, and Bob Johnson said to me, imagine, how do we get Michael Jordan to pick up a hockey stick instead of a basketball? So can you imagine what a hockey player, what a defenseman Michael Jordan would have been? And that's what I think's happened in Finland is the best players, the best athletes play hockey. Yeah. And you get a disproportionate response from that. So they've coached well, they've done a lot of things well, but their best athletes play hockey. That's the number one thing.
Yeah, I had a great conversation with Germany years ago with the exact same conversation. He came back to me. He's like, we get the fifth sports in Germany. First one goes automatically to football, soccer. Then we've got handball. We've got rugby as well. We've got volleyball that's bigger than hockey. And then we get the fifth level athlete down there. And Switzerland is doing another great job. I haven't even mentioned Switzerland, but they've done another great thing. But again, like you said, they're still doing a great job getting, and hockey's a really expensive sport. Let's not split hairs. I mean, it takes a lot of resources to make water freeze inside of a facility, and then go out there and get coaches and all the resources to facilitate that with the gear and all that. It's a really tough kick at the can, but yet they're all keeping up to Canada, pushing on the heels. And I think we as Canadians, we just like looking around going, we should just have this birthright that we should be given the gold medal as opposed to going out there and beating the hell out of everyone and winning. But who am I to say?
Yeah, I think what Canada's done is remarkable, but what some of the smaller countries have done, you're right, it's amazing.
I want to tie in not hockey right now, and I want to call this segment "Being Brian Burke," because you cast a really big shadow. I know. Even going up to you the very first time I met you, you were standing alone at a TIFF event, and this is like I want to go with 2010, somewhere in the ballpark. So you just got into Toronto. You're with the Leafs at the time, and I was amazed that nobody was talking to you. And I just took my shot, and you gave me your email address, which I thought was just remarkable. And then you'd send me an email back or a response when I would say something. And thank you. And that would be it. And I mean, that was the response. That's all I was like, wow, you even responded. I couldn't believe that. But because of where you've been, the hats you've worn, Obviously, you're a big celebrity here in Canada as well, especially, you know, in Toronto. Let's talk a little bit about what like being Brian Burke is really all about off the ice, because we all know who truculent Brian Burke is on the ice. But I thought we'd go with a little rapid fire just to kind of keep it light. And I want to ask you a series of questions, kind of non-hockey related, but just thought I get your one word response or one kind of like one thought response. You ready?
Yep.
Because of hockey, I was able to meet who that you really wanted to meet?
Gordie Howe.
Bad boy. 8-year-old Brian would think of what of Brian at 68 today?
Glad I changed. Glad I grew up.
You were watching Miracle on Ice where?
In my apartment in Cambridge, Mass.
Your favorite fighter, not on the ice, but like boxer.
Oh, Muhammad Ali for sure.
Favorite football player?
Dick Butkus.
Of course. Basketball player, baseball player?
I don't know if I have a basketball player, a baseball player. I don't know. I'd have to. That's the problem with rapid fire. You have to come up with a good answer, and you don't always have a good answer.
I would have said Ted Williams for you because obviously you grew up in New England. And
I just read a book about Ted Williams called The Cloudbuster 9, about the pre-flight training for World War II and Ted Williams, and it was amazing insight into the thing. But he was a great fisherman, but he just was not a nice person. So I have a hard time saying Ted Williams.
Wasn't friendly.
Yeah, I'd have to think about that. I keep coming back to Twins. I grew up in Minnesota. I keep thinking Rod Carew comes to mind, or Tony Oliva. I was a Twins fan.
Hall of Famer Rod Carew. Any other sport of an athlete that you admired in any other sport?
I'm a huge rugby fan, so I liked Jonah Lomu. I really like Sinzan Brooke. I thought he was just an amazing athlete. So probably a rugby player.
And Jonah Lomu was just a freak of nature. I don't think anybody should be that big and that powerful and that fast. Yeah. And crush bones is good. Favorite country you like to visit?
I'd say Sweden.
Yeah, me too. Okay, I know you're a fisherman, but the biggest fish with the best story?
My biggest salmon would be I fish the Haida Gwaii every year. So that's used to be called the Queen Charlotte Islands. Was renamed the Haida Gwaii after the Haida band that lives in the Queen Charlottes. So I go to Langara Lodge, which is the northernmost island in the chain. Langara Island and Langara Lodge. I met Rick Bourne, who owns the lodge, when he first opened it. I started going there in 1990, 91 maybe. That's my 57.5 pounder that I caught and released, by the way. But that's my.
How did you let that go?
Well, you can't kill a big fish anymore. You can't. That fish has got to get up the river.
I get it, but it's a 50 half. You even said the half a pound, Brian. So like, you know, it's 57 pounds, or you said 57.5 pounds. So you've got an attachment, a tie to that. Like, are you kissing it before you let it go?
No, just our guide Chucky would have killed me if we killed that fish.
Would you give it a reach around? Like, you have to give something before you
have to measure the length, the girth, and the width of the fish, and use that measurement to determine what it weighs. And there's some, it's not scientific. There's some lodges use different formula. That fish that was 57.5 would have been 62 at certain lodges. So I don't know exactly how big it was, but 57.5 is what I'm sticking to it. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. Might have been heavier, might have been lighter. I don't think so.
The weirdest thing about that picture to me is looks like the weirdest thing about that picture to me, like there's something wrong with your face. It actually looks like you're smiling.
Yeah, I'm not much for smiling. I agree.
I don't think I've ever seen that face. Like, it looks like you have indigestion or something like that. You should get that checked out, Berkey.
Yeah, I know. I got to work on that.
As Brian Burke, I'm often misunderstood for what?
I don't really care. I really don't. Like, one of the beauties of working for Pat Quinn, I remember my first year in Vancouver, Tony Gallagher wrote something that really bothered me. And it drove me nuts. I was cursing and kicking, and Pat called me and sat me down. He said, "You've got to stop." He said, these people don't count. He said, people that write terrible things and dishonest things and go after you like that, you've got to learn to ignore them, or this will drive you nuts. This job will kill you. And that day, my attitude changed, which is, Pat never cared. Like, people wrote terrible things. Pat could have cared less. And I think the job is impossible to do unless you can tune out the white noise. So people say, "What do you really like?" I'm like, well, first off, you ask that question, you don't really know me, and you don't. People who know me know I'm a good guy. They know I care about important things. They know I'm family oriented. People know that. If they don't know that, then I don't really care.
Yeah.
I'm not running for office. I'm not kissing babies. I've never had an elected job, and I won't. Because I'll tell you, like, a guy came up to me. This used to drive my second wife crazy. People come up to me and say, "I just heard you speak. I've never really liked you, but you seem like a good guy."
You said this in your book, yeah.
Yeah, and the nice thing to say right then would be, "Well, I'm glad I made a friend today." And I'm like, "Do you think I really care what you thought about me yesterday, let alone today? You think that matters to me? Because you're obviously a piece of garbage." So, and people, my wife would say at the time, "Can't you just make a friend? Can't you just walk away with a smile?" I'm like, "No, I can't. I don't want that person just insulted me." Think about what a left-handed compliment that is. You know what? I've never liked you, but I heard you speak today, and now all of a sudden you might be a good guy. Like, screw you. I don't need that.
I got a different take on that. Can I share that with you?
No.
Okay. We'll go to the next one. A moment that's so special, you only wanted to celebrate it once, and you can't say Stanley Cup.
Well, I think the birth of your kids, but I remember my dad. I'm one of 10. I remember asking my dad after the 10th kid was born. I said, "Dad, does it ever lose its magic?" And my dad said to me, he said, "It's a miracle every time." He said, "It never changes. Even if we have 10 more kids, it won't change." I remember my dad telling me that. So that was, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. And the way his face lit up when he talked about he had 10 kids, 10 goddamn kids at that point. And he
lived to be 90.
And his face lit up like he was so happy to talk about having babies. He said, "There's nothing like it." That's still the miracle to me is having kids. There's just nothing like it. Just amazing how they change your life.
Great answer. If I go to war, I take these 3 people with me, and this is the reason why.
Probably Pat Quinn, probably Lou Lamoriello, probably Gary Bettman.
Right. Okay. I don't even have to ask why. People don't know this, but I'm really good at what?
I'm not really good at too many things. I think I'm really good at the stuff I set my heart to and set my mind to, I can master. I'm really good at. I think one thing that people would be surprised, I'm really good at teaching. I taught law school. I worked really hard at being a good teacher. I think I'm a good teacher.
Yeah. In my downtime, I like to what?
Read.
Right. Okay, you go back to reading and to teaching, and we're going to finish off with your favorite 2 days of the year. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Favorite 2 days of the year.
Your favorite 2 days of the year, the Primetime Sports Management Conference.
I should. Yes, they're my favorite 2 days of the year.
Yeah, because like this is intriguing to me because when I remember, oh, there you are there. I remember when you were with the Leafs, out of nowhere, you came up with I don't even know what to call it. It was either a report or it was something that wasn't asked for that we weren't thinking that you were going to do, but it was telling interns on how to give themselves 100% chance for every single job going into whatever their passion was. And I thought that was fantastic. I mean, you had me right there where I was just like, you didn't have to do that. Everybody would have given you a pass because being a Toronto Maple Leaf is a full-time job plus 10. And yet you still made time to do stuff like this. And then there's this conference as well that you go and you teach at. So I thought we'd just give a little bit of a good plug for this?
Well, Trevor Whiffen and Trevor's my partner at Primetime. We started this 16 years ago, I think it was last year, was their 16th year. And we were asked to do, during the lockout year, I was working for TSN, and a woman, Barbara Cole, I think her name was, called me and said, Insight, a company in Toronto, wants to do a sports conference. Will you help us with it? And so I said, they want Trevor Whiffen to work on it with me. I'd met Trevor. I really liked Trevor. So we started doing it. And at the end of the conference, it went really well. And Insight said, well, we're not going to pay you anything extra. And the deal they made with them was, we'll give you $1,000 to do the work. If it goes well, we'll give you a bonus. And then they stiffed me. So,
wow.
So I said to Trevor, well, I've done all the work. I got all the paperwork here. Let's just do it ourselves. So we started doing it ourselves. And Trevor and I are doing it 16 years later. We're still doing it. So it's the best 2 days of the year for me. Sportsnet's a sponsor, and we have a great time. I love teaching. I love Trevor's really good at it too. So we get the top people in sports from all around the world, and we get the top sponsors, and it's just an amazing 2 days. So thanks for bringing that up, Chuck. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I'm a remiss here because I missed that. It was November the 13th, and I was in Oregon at the time. I drove across the country in the Holy Chuck truck and came back as well, and I missed that. But that's something I definitely wanted to go to. I'm going to make a point this year of going to that as well, simply because like there's so much there. I went through the website. I think we have the banner as well that we'll put up. And we'll put all the links into the podcast as well for people to go. But I mean, like A to Z or A to Z for Americans, across the board of like whether you're a student, an intern, an athlete, a parent, whatever, there's a ton of value on every single subject line that you guys introduce. And the value is not only there as well, but I mean, I think it just gives a better networking opportunity for people to go out there and meet other people of like vocation as well, whether they be writers or coaches, and just get a better understanding. I think it's kind of like USA Hockey Congress in Colorado Springs.
Yeah, we pick the topics every year based on what's current, what's important right then. So in an Olympic year, we might have a panel on doping, and so we try and tailor the topics to what's relevant, what's important, what's timely. And then we bring in the top people from all around Canada and the rest of the world to talk about it. So I think it's targeted well. I think it's staffed unbelievably well. I think it's a really cool thing. I think, like you say, for networking, we haven't changed the price for students in 15 years, 16 years now. It's still affordable for young kids that want to get started in sports. But it's the best 2 days of the year. I get to teach for 2 days. I get to meet the top people in sports and all around the world for 2 days. I get to interact with them. So, yeah, it's a lot of fun. I thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, and I want to give Shannon Hosford over at MLSE kind of credit as well, because they came up with the Change the Game program. After COVID had hit, they went out and did a lot of research. What I've been saying for 10 years about mental health, mindset, community, all the inclusivity, diversity, they went out there, they got all the data of seeing what parents are dealing with, post-COVID with their kids in sports. And it was really eye-opening as well. So, I mean, a lot of the topics that, now comes into the foray for parents to go there and just get a better understanding of how they can better support their kids, how they can be better listeners, how they can get better tools and resources at their fingertips to have these difficult conversations as well, because I think that really saves lives.
I agree. I think it's the next big thing that we've got to focus on and do a better job with is mental health. And that's been a major shift in what I'm trying to do in my life too.
Yeah, our sponsor, Holy Chuck Burger, Johnny Pursulis, is a big advocate of mental health. Have you ever had a Holy Chuck Burger?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I'll bring you lunch. Johnny will bring down, and I'll bring you some gift certificates as well. But yeah, I'm not going to say you have to say Holy Chuck, but could you say Holy Chuck?
No.
Ron McLean did. We had him on the show, and he said Holy Chuck. But regardless, I'm going to bring you some Holy Chuck burgers for game day as well.
They're great burgers, but I don't do endorsements. I don't do testimonials, so no, I'm not going to say it. But They are great burgers. I have had them.
They give me the meat sweats, Brian. Whenever I have it, I need a timeout because we had it on game day at Scotiabank, and I had to have a nap on the subway on the way back down to the rink because I was breaking out into the meat sweats. It was a lot. So, final things that you want to say to parents right now that you have the ability to go out and have this platform, and I know your heart's always in the right spot. So I just thought I'd give you an opportunity to talk to parents and kids right now.
So I always make this point when I talk to kids. First off, there's two things I say to young players or parents of young players. Number one is your kid is probably not going to play in the NHL, so don't act like he is. There's 600 kids that go start at Harvard Law School every year. It's a big law school, by the way.
Yeah.
People don't realize that Harvard is one of the bigger law schools. There's 600 kids in each class. So every year, 600 people graduate from Harvard Law School. There's 30 kids, maybe 40 kids going to play their first game in the NHL. Your odds are way better to get a kid into Harvard Law School than to go to play in the NHL. So act like that. Don't assume your kid's going to play in the NHL. That's number one. Number two is have your kid play more than one sport. They don't need to specialize till they get to be about 13 or 14, which is even too young for me. But up till then, let them play other sports. They'll find out they get a rest, they get a break from hockey. They enjoy other sports. It teaches them other skills. So let them play more than one sport.
Awesome. Brian Burke, it's been a pleasure having you on the show today. I know you're a busy guy. You've got the women's game tonight as well. And I really want to thank you for taking the time out and being on the show. Looking forward to have you back on the show at a later date.
Thanks, Chuck. Thanks for having me on.
That is truculent Brian Burke, on Chuck's World of Infinite Mojo. And wow, just really happy that he had a chance to see. I mean, if you get a chance to read Brian's book, it's right here. It was really, really enjoyable. I mean, like I said this at the very beginning of the podcast, but it had everything in it for me. He wrote me in the book, said enjoy, and I did exactly that. There was great stories. He had vulnerable moments, which for Brian Burke could be kind of a funny thing. Like I said, the picture of him smiling as well, which is kind of weird. But again, we'll bring up our amazing producer, Cam LaRock, and see what he thought.
Yeah, Chuck, it's a very rainy day right now in London, Ontario, and I don't think there's a better way to spend your rainy morning than with Brian Burke.
I just heard thunder right there as soon as you said that. So it's like you actually just brought it.
It's pouring out there right now, and yeah, like I said, I can't imagine a better way to spend the morning than with Brian Burke, hearing everything he has to say, and starting just with initiatives and his involvement with the PWHL and the You Can Play project. It's nice to hear that side of Brian, because I'll admit I only know him from the grumpy side you see on TV, right? So it's nice to see that side of him. And when you guys were talking about the Primetime Sports, I believe you almost just about got a smile out of him as well. And that's huge for the podcast.
I think we have that one picture of Brian and I where I just said, I don't think you put that up there as well, but we were talking about the ADM one morning skate, and I coerced him to have a picture and say, hey, can we get a picture here? He's like, all right, be fast about it. I'm like, okay, smile. And he says, I am smiling. And that's what I'm saying, when it comes down to it, like, that's Brian Burke right there. That's a smile right there. So, I mean, this is the one thing I love about Brian Burke, and I'll say this as well, is like, I can see why people could say, he mentioned this in the podcast about, like, I never liked you, or like that. One person is who they are. And if there's 8 billion people in the world, there's going to be 8 different personality traits that they see of that one person. So you could be whoever you are, and you're always going to attract people who see you through the filter and lens of how they want to see you, regardless of how he's being. So when they come up to him, they say, I thought you were an asshole, you're prickly or whatever like that. What I think they're trying to say is, I see the kindness in you. I see that you're not who I thought you were. And they're kind of telling on themselves. And like he says, it's a backhanded compliment, and he's right. But I think what the human experience would say is, hey, I like who you are, and I was wrong because I viewed you through, this viewer lens that wasn't fair to you. And I really, I'm glad I got to meet you. If somebody said that to me, we don't say that, but that's the take I had on it as well. So, what do you think? Let me hear that.
I also wanted to add in, wow, Brian's quite the master fisherman. I'm seeing some pictures of some of the other fish just on the internet. Oh, my goodness. I wish.
He's
Maybe
I,
one day. He's
I
gonna have to
didn't
show
ask
me
him
a
if
few
he
tips.
actually if he caught a grander, but he said his salmon was 57.5 pounds as well. So obviously, if he goes off Florida, and I think his dad was from Florida as well, and if he ever went sport fishing with marlins or the granders, the 1,000-pounders that are the Cabo Wabo and Sammy Harris, who's the guy from Van Halen, Sammy Hager, like has Cabo Wabo, and they all go sport fishing and whatnot too as well. So that's going to do it for us today on Chuck's World of Infinite Mojo. I want to thank our friends over at Maxwell Clothiers, for getting us nice and snippy for Gentlemen Wear Cuffs today with Brian Burke, Johnny Persilis over at Holy Chuck Burger as well, for coming out. Our good friends at Padskins as well. We're going to actually bring down some burgers and whatnot for Brian as well on game day as well. But we also wanted to say thanks to Nash Sports as well for coming in, and our good friends at Padskins as well, and our good friends at Mixed Chicks who keep all this hair nice and flowing. So thank
We
you
got a
to
lot of
all of
good
you.
friends.
Yeah, and thank you for joining us today. I know you could have been anywhere you wanted to be today, but you're here to see Brian Burke for us, and hopefully we got you some value of that, and we'll look forward to having you next time on another channel. Be good.